Everyone knew him only as the night shift gas station worker. But after the customer showed that badge in his wallet, Frank's world changed. That badge was very specific in shape, the kind only carried by Delta Force's highest-level operators. And if this customer was really who he thought he was, standing before him was one of the most legendary figures in military operation history. Today I'll share with you the story of an encounter that emerged during a night shift and two war brothers. Before the video begins, please let me know in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you believe stories like this need to be told, please subscribe. Sunset Gas Station on Highway 87 was a small gas station in the middle of Texas. It served truckers and night travelers passing through the main road. Two pumps, a small market, and a quiet place open 24 hours. And on that night shift, the same man had been working for 10 years. Frank Rodriguez was 54 years old, medium height, with a calm expression, a reliable man. He worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., serving customers, never causing problems. The townspeople had gotten used to him. Quiet, kind Frank who did his job well. He had never married and lived in a small trailer behind the station. Nobody knew much about his past. It was only known that he had come to town 10 years ago, was trustworthy, and preferred the night shift. Frank had regular customers, truckers, police officers, doctors working the night shift. He knew them all and had brief conversations with each. That Wednesday night at 2:30 a.m., an unfamiliar customer arrived. About 40 years old, medium height, athletic build. He wore a simple t-shirt and jeans. He pulled his pickup truck next to the pump, got gas, then came inside to pay. "Good evening," the man said with a slight accent in his voice. "Good evening," Frank said. "You were getting gas, right?" "Yes, pump 2. $45. The man took out his wallet. While paying, the wallet opened and Frank saw inside credit cards, some cash, and a badge. Frank's heart stopped. That badge was golden, small, but very familiar. It was Delta Force's special insignia, the very secret, very special badge that only the highest-level operators carried. Frank recognized this, because he was also a former Green Beret, and he knew that only legendary operators carried the Delta Force badge. "That badge," Frank said, a slight tremor in his voice. The man immediately closed his wallet. "What badge?" "The one I saw in your wallet, the Delta Force badge." The man's expression changed. "You're mistaken." "No, I'm also a former soldier, Green Beret. I recognize that badge." The two men looked at each other. The silence lasted a long time. "This isn't the place to talk," the man said. "Where should we talk?" The man thought. "Tomorrow night. Same time, here." Frank nodded. "Okay." The man left. Frank thought about him throughout the night. Was that badge real? And if so, who was that man? The next night, Frank waited for the customer. At 2:30, the same pickup truck arrived. The man came inside. "Hello?" Frank said. "Hello?" "My name is Frank Rodriguez, Green Beret 82nd Airborne, 1985-2005. The man hesitated. "I'm Carlos Martinez. They just call me Ghost." Frank's breath caught. "Ghost Martinez? The legendary Ghost Martinez?" Carlos nodded. "I haven't heard that call sign in a long time." Frank was in shock. Ghost Martinez was one of Delta Force's most legendary operators. He had participated in very secret operations, accomplished impossible missions, then mysteriously disappeared. "Are you really him?" Frank asked. "I used to be, not anymore." "But you died." "The official records say KIA." Carlos gave a bitter smile. "Yes, I officially died, in 2008. "What happened?" Carlos looked around. There were no other customers. "Afghanistan. A very classified operation. We went to take a Taliban leader, but something went wrong." Frank listened quietly. "The intel was wrong. We were trapped. My entire team died. I was left alone." "How did you survive?" "I hid in the desert for 3 days. Then I made my own way out, but officially I had died too. A KIA report had been written." Frank could understand. And you didn't correct it. I didn't correct it because Ghost Martinez really had died. Now I'm just Carlos. The two veterans stood quietly. Then Frank spoke. Why do you live here? Because nobody knows me here. Nobody knows Ghost Martinez. I live a peaceful life. Don't you ever miss it? The operations, the team. Carlos's eyes filled with tears. Every day. But that life isn't in me anymore. It was too heavy. Frank could understand. PTSD, survivor's guilt, trauma. Many veterans experienced it. How did you cope? Carlos asked. I was lucky. I didn't lose my team. But it was still difficult. Here in this quiet place, I found peace. Good choice. I followed a similar path. The two men began sharing their pasts, war stories, losses, traumas, but also brotherhood. Ghost, Frank said, you're a legend. We used to hear about your operations too. Those are in the past. Now I'm Carlos, just an ordinary person. So what do you do for work? I'm a farmer. I bought a small farm. I work with animals. Very calming. Frank smiled. Ghost Martinez became a farmer. Who would believe it? Nobody would believe it, and nobody needs to know. After that, Carlos became a regular customer. He would come every week, get gas, and chat with Frank. A warm friendship developed between the two veterans. One night, Carlos told Frank something different. Frank, I want to ask you something. Ask. Are you happy here? Are you satisfied with this life? Frank thought. Mostly yes. Calm, peaceful, but sometimes. Sometimes I think I could do more. Share my experiences. Carlos nodded. I feel the same way. How? While working on the farm, sometimes I help young farmers. I teach them. It feels very good. Frank listened with interest. What do you teach? Practical things. Security, organization, discipline. Of course, I don't mention my military background. But you help? Yes, I serve in a different way. Frank liked this idea. Maybe I could do something similar. How? I don't know, but there must be a way I can use my experiences. Months passed. Frank and Carlos's friendship deepened. The two veterans shared their pasts and supported each other. One night, an emergency came to the gas station. A young man rushed inside in panic. Help! There's been an accident outside. A truck overturned. Frank immediately ran outside. On the main road, a large truck was on its side, the driver trapped in the cab. The driver was unconscious and losing a lot of blood. Frank remembered his military medical training. He checked the driver's pulse, opened his airways, and controlled the bleeding. Did you call an ambulance? He asked the young man. Yes, it's coming, but he's losing a lot of blood. Frank tore his shirt to make bandages. He tried to save the driver's life. 15 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics were very impressed with Frank's intervention. Excellent work, the paramedic said. You saved the man's life. Then, journalists from the media came. They wanted to interview Frank. Where did you learn such good medical knowledge? The journalist asked. Frank hesitated. General knowledge, from TV, books. But the journalist was suspicious. It looked very professional. Frank didn't answer. The next night, Carlos came. He had heard the news. You were in the newspapers, Carlos said. You saved the man's life. I just provided medical assistance. But it was very professional. Military training was obvious. Frank was worried. I hope nobody gets suspicious. Why are you worried? You did a good thing. Because I want my past to remain secret. Carlos could understand. But Frank, maybe it's time to stop hiding. How? You have very valuable experiences, medical knowledge, crisis management, leadership. You can share these with people. Frank thought, but I don't want to reveal my military background. You don't have to reveal it. Just use your talents. This conversation greatly affected Frank. A few weeks later, the local hospital reached out to Frank. They had heard about his intervention that night and wanted him to give first aid training at the hospital. Frank accepted. and he was very successful. Students learned a lot from him. Frank gives very good training, the hospital director said. His experience is very deep. Where did you learn so much? A young doctor asked. Frank smiled. Life experience. Carlos was very happy when he heard this. How do you feel? He asked. Very good, helping people, teaching. It's like the old days. Just in a different way. Yes. Healing instead of war. Carlos was also inspired. He began giving training to young farmers on his farm, on organization, security, and leadership topics. One day, Carlos told Frank something special. Frank, I have a proposal for you. What is it? A joint project. Training program for veterans. How? Both of us together. You handle medical and crisis management, I handle organization and security. We can give veterans training for transitioning to civilian life. Frank loved this idea. Great idea, but how do we start? Small, with local veterans. Then we can grow. Frank agreed, and it was very successful. The program became very popular in Texas. Frank and Carlos's training is excellent, Veteran Bill said. Very practical, very valuable. These men are very experienced, said another veteran. It's like they've been in military operations for years. Frank and Carlos smiled. If their veteran friends knew the truth. One day, the local journalist visited Frank again. Frank, I want to write about you. This training program is very successful. Frank hesitated. No need. What's important is the program, not me. But people want to know you, your background. My background isn't important. The future is important, the journalist insisted. But it's very obvious you have military experience. Which unit? Carlos intervened. Private life. We need to show respect. The journalist gave up, but he had suspicions. That night, Frank and Carlos talked. The journalist is very curious, Frank said. Normal, but we can keep our past secret. Will we always hide them? Carlos thought. Maybe someday, but not now. We're not ready yet. Frank understood. You're right. Let the past stay in the past. What's important is what we're doing now. Yes, and it's very valuable. Years passed. Frank still worked at the gas station, but now he also gave training. Carlos lived on his farm, helping young farmers. Both had made peace with their pasts, Ghost Martinez and Green Beret. Frank Rodriguez no longer existed, but Carlos and Frank existed, and they were doing very valuable work. One day, Frank asked Carlos, did you ever regret it? That we hid? Carlos thought, no, because we couldn't have done it any other way then. Now we're ready. We're serving in a different way. Maybe this is the most beautiful service, peaceful. Definitely. The two veterans sat watching the sunset. The past, with its pains, had been left behind. The future looked full of hope. This story shows us that some heroes live quietly. They hide their pasts, but continue to serve. Like Frank and Carlos. They learn to help people in different ways in civilian life after leaving the battlefield. And perhaps this was the greatest heroism. Real service is done not for praise, but because it's needed. Frank and Carlos knew this. So, have you ever known someone like this? Someone who hid their past but served quietly? Tell us about them in the comments.